I'm Paul Carr,
And I'm Sarah Lacy.
and welcome to yet another special issue of our edition of Why Is This News? Except,
Issue? Are you putting out magazines?
yes, we're printing out frame by frame this whole thing. It's going to be the world's biggest flick book.
And no buy it. Maybe your parents. I don't even think my parents would.
No, my parents, no. This is another special edition because once again we're in different cities. I'm back in San Francisco. Sarah, where on earth are you?
Singapore.
My word, just another hotel room. You could just travel from like different rooms in the same hotel and just claim different places. Why, Sarah, are you in Singapore?
I'm in Singapore because, as you know, I need any excuse to get away from you and away from the office,
Yep.
first of all. Second of all, no, the government reached out to me a couple months ago and wanted someone from Silicon Valley to come and look into how they've done what they've done here. It's an interesting place because it's sort of an experiment of a country. It's a city state, which usually don't really work. It's incredibly orderly, and they have one of the highest qualities of life. They have one of the highest incomes per capita for Asia. They have one of the fastest growing economies anywhere. They're growing at about 18% this year. And they have no natural resources. So unlike a lot of Asia, Indonesia, certainly China, which has the natural resources of tons of people. Singapore is kind of one of those Israel-like stories that, on paper should not have done as well as it has. So I wanted to come and figure out a little bit of why that is.
Is it much like India and Israel because the Brits used to be in charge of it for a time? Does that help?
You know what's interesting? I think I can't actually see you, so I don't know if you're kidding or not. But it actually is. I mean, as you know, you and I've talked about. I was really stunned when researching my book on global entrepreneurship, how much colonialism comes up in every conversation that you have about a current culture of entrepreneurship in the emerging world, and colonialism has come up a lot here. But you know, it's particularly in the difference between Indonesia and Singapore. I mean, one of the reasons Singapore has pulled its act together much quickly is because it had a much less brutal occupation. And there's a lot of things that the Dutch did in Indonesia that the Brits did not do here.
Yeah.
Like India, they set up a better school system. In Indonesia, the Dutch didn't allow any Indonesians to run companies. Only Chinese could be like the local mercantile class. So Indonesians don't really have a history of entrepreneurship. And the Dutch were colonized for 350. The Dutch colonized Indonesia for 350 years, whereas it wasn't that bad here. So it's pretty interesting.
A strong message. Then fuck the Dutch.
Right. Or the Portuguese. I mean, they did some bad stuff to Brazil too. I mean, I hate to say this because
We have a blemish-free, as Brits, we have a blemish-free.
God, I mean, you have not screwed up as many countries as your European neighbors.
Yes, it's one of our many achievements. So let's go to specifics. So I know you were at an event last night where you were being pitched by.
The Starbucks logo on my cover is cup. My cup is covered, so I'm going to drink out of it anyway. As you can hear by how I can't say a sentence, I need coffee.
I love the fact that you've covered the label and then just said the name of the label that's covered. That's
free speech, buddy.
In Singapore, we invented it. So let's go to specifics. You were at an event last night, which was one of these. You do seem to find them in every country, where entrepreneurs came and they sort of probably pitched you their ideas. What did you see? What's coming out of Singapore?
So this is what I was really happy to see. Usually at these events where it's a mass number of entrepreneurs coming to pitch a reporter from TechCrunch, you get a lot of very derivative versions of Valley ideas, which I don't particularly like to write about. They're basically people who are reading TechCrunch way too much. And, they're not really building something for their local country. They're not really building something out of their own passion. It's just kind of this glamour entrepreneurship. But that wasn't really the case last night. I only was pitched by, there's about 100 or so people there. I was only pitched by two people who I would put in that category of doing just kind of the iPhone game or whatever. Everyone else had a pretty unique business, and it was everything from, really interesting things that tie together mobile payments across markets throughout, across Southeast Asian markets. So in the Philippines, in Malaysia, in Indonesia, here, which you can imagine is a huge need because mobile is sort of the only thing that's really working and really broad based when it comes to the web in these countries. And all of they don't have a lot of e-commerce because the systems aren't in place. So if someone could come in and do all the heavy lifting in the back end to do that across the countries, that could be quite a huge company. Another interesting one was a company that I met called Brandtology. And what they do is they actually put both a technology algorithm and a human solution behind looking across social media and seeing what people are saying about a brand. So it's sort of an enterprise software, like Nokia is one of their customers and wants to know what's being said about Nokia and what's being said about Nokia's competitors. And what's different about these guys from your average sort of BS social media consultant is they have a lot of technology behind it. They have a custom crawler that can crawl a lot of like Chinese BBSs and things like that that don't normally have RSS feeds that you can't call from normally. And then they have people who can sit on top of it, and in each country they operate, they know the local language, they know the local slang, they can get context. So they get a very sophisticated view of how people in all these different emerging markets really are interacting with your brand. And as the Chinese web has more people than the US web. So it's a fairly sophisticated thing they spend a lot of time on that you can imagine is going to have a lot of importance going forward. And that's kind of the key to Singapore. It's such a practical place, and they're keenly aware they don't have a big domestic market. It's about 4 or 5 million people who live here. And their advantage is it's Asia with training wheels. It is an incredibly easy place to come into, to get, BlackBerry service, to everyone speaks English. The cabs are like, you think of a cab and it's right there and they speak English. It is just a futuristic city in that sense. And they've worked so hard. Better than Uber cab, and the government supports it. They've worked so hard on making the city as convenient and competitive as possible. And so it's a very kind of no-brainer place if you're a Western company and you want to launch something. If you just want to go into China, you got to go to China. If you just want to go into India, you got to go to India. But if you want to have this pan-Southeast Asian or pan-Asian, company, Singapore's a pretty competitive place to start it up. And that's exactly what the city is trying to sell.
Okay, so that's Singapore. You're there till the end of the week, and then
Yes.
you're heading where? Where's next on the Sarah Lacy Whirlwind Tour?
I'm heading to one of my favorite places.
Oh,
Do
yes.
you know what?
I do, but I suspect the viewers don't. So why don't you
I
announce?
suspect they do, since I've now written about it and tweeted many times, and there's several hundred people coming to an event there. Jakarta.
Yeah. Which, yes, as you say, you've been there before, and that's an area you've written about in the book as well. So, what are you most looking forward to in Jakarta? Apart from the hundreds of the food, I was going to say apart from the hundreds of people coming to see you, but the food goes the food, then the people, and then the rest
That's what I love about Southeast Asia. Like they say here, the national pastime in Singapore is the food. Like someone was telling me that you can't even get people riled up about a conversation about politics. Like you can try and try, but they won't. But then if you'll be like, the best chili crab is at Long Beach, like half the table will just lose their shit and start arguing with you.
Yeah, it's like London with food, with weather. So, we'll try and get
London, what?
It's like London with weather. You can.
I thought you were saying London with food, and I was like, London has the world's worst food.
Yeah, well, we can all agree on that. Which is amazing that Singapore has recovered from us. Anyway, so anyone who wants to see pictures of the food can go to saralacy.com, where you've been posting your culinary diary. And hopefully in the post on this video, we'll be able to get some of those startups you mentioned. Otherwise, we will see you in Jakarta.
Sounds good.
Thank you, Sarah. Join us next time on Why Is This News?